China has just launched a $12,000 EV that puts Tesla in a position it has rarely faced before. Not because it is faster, not because it is louder, but because it asks a simple question Tesla has not answered. Why does an electric car still have to cost so much? The car is called the BYD Seagull, and on paper, it should not be a threat. It is small, cheap, and built far from America. Yet the more people looked at it, the harder it became to dismiss. So what did China build for $12,000, and why is Tesla unable to match it? The number that changes everything. The number sounds almost impossible at first, $12,000 for a real electric car. But in April 2023, BYD launched the Seagull in China at roughly that price, and by April 2025, the base model had dropped to about $7,800. This was not a concept, a tiny city cart, or a fleet-only experiment. It was a 5-door production hatchback with 6 airbags, a 10.1-inch rotating touchscreen, and a real-world driving range of about 190 to 252 miles. For American buyers, that number feels even harder to explain. In early 2025, the average new vehicle in the United States cost $47,962, while the cheapest new car, the Nissan Versa, started at $18,330. The cheapest Tesla, the Model 3, started at $38,990. Against that backdrop, a $7,800 electric car with modern driving assistance does not fit the normal market picture. It makes people ask why affordable EVs seem possible in China, but almost unreachable in America. The strange part is that the Seagull did not stay a small curiosity. In November 2024, it became the single best-selling vehicle in all of China. Not just the best-selling electric car, not just the best-selling small car, the best-selling vehicle of any kind in the world's largest auto market. That means it beat gasoline cars, electric cars, cheap cars, and premium cars in the same month. BYD's momentum did not slow down after that. By mid-2025, the company had built its 1 millionth Seagull, reaching that milestone in just 25 months. No Western carmaker has produced a sub-$15,000 E5 at that scale in any time frame. BYD even marked the moment with a public event because the Seagull had become more than a low-cost model. It had become proof that the market wanted something different. By 2025, the biggest shift was impossible to ignore. BYD sold 2.26 million battery electric vehicles globally, while Tesla sold 1.64 million. Tesla also reported its second straight annual sales decline, dropping 8.6%. This was no longer a future threat or a distant prediction. The leadership change had already happened, and the car at the center of that pressure was one of the cheapest EVs in the world. But low price alone does not explain the Seagull's impact. Before calling it a real Tesla problem, we need to see what $12,000 actually buys. What $12,000 actually buys? The Seagull does not look like a car designed only to be cheap. Its lead designer was Wolfgang Egger, a European veteran who had worked at Lamborghini and Audi before joining BYD in 2021. The car has flush door handles, sharp LED headlights, a sloping roofline, and a rear light bar. Chinese journalists even called it the mini Lamborghini, and that nickname did not come from BYD's own marketing team. The safety package is where the price becomes harder to dismiss. Every Seagull trim comes with 6 airbags, electronic stability control, ABS, and a body made from 61% high-strength steel. Some hot-formed sections are rated above 1,500 megapascals tensile strength. China's official testing body gave it a top 3A safety rating, while the European version, sold as the BYD Dolphin Surf, received 5 stars from Euro NCAP. The battery is also not a weak point hiding under a low price. The Seagull uses BYD's Blade battery, a lithium iron phosphate cell-to-pack system built for long life and thermal safety. In the nail penetration test, it did not catch fire, while many conventional lithium-ion packs fail that kind of abuse. The battery also carries an 8-year warranty, which makes the price feel even harder to explain. Technology pushed the question even further. The 2025 top trim added God's Eye C, BYD's driver assistance system trained on 72 million kilometers of real Chinese road data. It included lane keeping, adaptive cruise, and automatic emergency braking. The 2026 model added an optional LiDAR unit and city navigation autopilot with traffic light and roundabout recognition. These features used to belong on cars many times more expensive. Western reviewers who drove it did not describe it like a cheap throwaway. Inside EVs tested the Seagull in Suzhou and called it scary good, saying it did not feel cheap or bad. Carsalas.com.au also found it became the crowd favorite at a China media event, even with cars nearby that cost far more. Its 405 kilometers CLTC rating translates to about 196 to 208 miles in mixed real-world driving, which means the price is not the only thing making Tesla nervous. So if the Seagull is this cheap, this safe, and this capable, one question becomes unavoidable. Why did Elon Musk once laugh at the company that built it? The laugh that cost a decade. In October 2011, Bloomberg TV asked Elon Musk about BYD as a possible competitor. Musk laughed out loud and said, "I don't think they have a great product." It was not a private comment or something repeated secondhand. It was a recorded interview, and the man behind BYD, Wang Chuanfu, heard it. At the time, Tesla looked like the future, and BYD looked easy to dismiss. Wang Chuanfu had started BYD in Shenzhen in 1995, long before the Seagull existed. He borrowed around $300,000 from relatives and opened a rechargeable battery factory. In 2003, he moved into automaking. For years, Western executives saw BYD as a second-tier Chinese manufacturer, building cheap vehicles for a domestic market they believed did not demand much. That judgment would become harder to defend with every passing year. Between 2016 and 2022, China's central government spent roughly $57 billion supporting EV adoption through subsidies, tax breaks, and charging infrastructure. That money helped create demand, but it also gave companies like BYD the volume needed to improve quickly. While Tesla was becoming the world's most valuable automaker by market cap, BYD was building something quieter, the industrial base to make electric cars cheaper at scale. By 2023, BYD launched the Seagull. By November 2024, it had become the best-selling car in China. By 2025, Wang Chuanfu's company was outselling Tesla by about 620,000 vehicles a year, and BYD's cheapest car cost less than a single month's payment on many Teslas. The laugh from 2011 had not disappeared. It had turned into one of the most expensive dismissals in modern car history. The answer is not just cheaper labor, and it is not only government money. A February 2026 study showed the real gap is built much deeper. Why Tesla's cheapest car costs $38,990. The easy explanation is that Chinese EVs are cheap because of subsidies. But in February 2026, the Rhodium Group studied how much of BYD's cost advantage over Tesla came from state support. The answer was only about 5%. The other 95% came from structural advantages. That finding matters because it means the price gap is not something Tesla can fix by simply cutting a few $1,000s. The first advantage is vertical integration. BYD makes its own batteries, motors, semiconductors, and many body components. Tesla still partners with Panasonic and CATL for batteries, and does not build its own chips at volume. Every outside supplier adds a profit margin. BYD avoids much of that because it is the supplier. UBS found BYD can build cars about 25% cheaper than Western rivals, even inside China. The second advantage is scale. BYD employs more than 100,000 scientists and engineers, but it spreads that cost across about 4.6 million vehicles a year. Tesla spreads its engineering cost across 1.64 million vehicles. The math is simple. The more cars a company builds, the less each individual car has to carry. That is why scale becomes a hidden weapon in the price of a low-cost EV. The third advantage is speed. BYD can move a vehicle from idea to factory production in about 18 months, while many Western and American automakers need 36 months or more. That shorter cycle saves money on engineering time, tooling, testing schedules, and delayed production. In the car business, time is not just time. It becomes cost, and that cost eventually shows up in the price on the windshield. If BYD's advantage is structural, the next question becomes uncomfortable. Why can't American buyers simply buy the Seagull and let the market decide? The wall Americans don't talk about. America's barrier against the Seagull is not small. The United States places a 100% tariff on Chinese-built electric vehicles, and when connected vehicle restrictions are added, the effective wall reaches about 247.5%. A BYD Seagull priced around $7,800 in China would pass $20,000 before it even reached an American showroom. The price that makes it dangerous to Tesla disappears before the car can compete. Washington's argument is not only about protecting automakers, it is also about national security. A modern EV carries cameras, sensors, GPS, microphones, and cellular systems that stay connected while the car moves through daily life. Because Chinese law can compel companies to provide data to the government, US officials see Chinese connected vehicles as a possible surveillance risk. In that view, the Seagull is not judged only as a car, it is judged as a moving data device. Public frustration is already starting to show. In June 2026, a reader wrote to Commando.com after driving a BYD Seagull in China and said he would buy one immediately, but could not bring it home to the United States. That reaction matters because it puts a human face on the policy wall. Americans are not just reading about cheap EVs anymore. Some have driven them, liked them, and then learned the door is closed. Europe shows the wall is not universal. In May 2025, BYD registered more battery electric vehicles in Europe than Tesla for the first time, even with EU tariffs in place. In the UK, where no extra Chinese EV tariff was imposed, electric cars became cheaper than gasoline cars for the first time in 2025. Chinese competition helped push that crossover. Outside America, the pressure is already changing prices, but tariffs only explain why Americans cannot buy the Seagull. They do not explain how BYD built a car so cheap that tariffs became necessary in the first place. How BYD builds the car. America can't match BYD's biggest advantage begins with the battery. The Blade battery is not bought from an outside supplier. It is designed, engineered, and manufactured inside BYD's own system. In the nail penetration test, the pack did not catch fire, while many conventional lithium-ion packs fail under that kind of damage. That matters because BYD controls one of the most expensive parts of any EV instead of paying another company to supply it. A simple comparison helps explain the model. When Apple moved to its own silicon in 2020, it removed Intel's profit margin and gained tighter control over performance and timing. BYD applied that same logic across the car itself. It controls the battery, motor, semiconductor, and chassis at the same time. This is not one shortcut. It is a full manufacturing system built to remove outside costs before the final price is even set. Technology is part of the same strategy. BYD's God's Eye driver assistance system was trained on 72 million kilometers of real-world Chinese driving data in 2024 alone. The 2025 Seagull offered highway assist and automatic emergency braking. The 2026 version added LiDAR, city navigation autopilot, traffic light recognition, and roundabout navigation. Tesla charges thousands for advanced driving software on top of a much more expensive car. BYD placed similar features near the Seagull's price tier. Speed gives BYD another edge. The company can move a vehicle from concept to factory production in about 18 months, while many Western automakers need around 36 months or more. That faster cycle is possible because BYD controls the supply chain internally. When it wants to update software, battery management, or ADAS cameras, it does not wait for another supplier's schedule. It changes its own system. The Rhodium Group found that BYD's structural advantages create about $4,700 in savings per vehicle compared with Tesla. Subsidies made up only about $235 of that number. The rest came from vertical integration, scale, lower overhead, lower R&D cost per vehicle, and supplier terms. The Seagull is not cheap because of one trick. It is cheap because BYD spent 30 years building the kind of EV machine Western automakers chose not to build. If BYD's cost advantage is built this deep, the next question becomes harder for Tesla. What happens in markets where America's tariff wall does not exist? What the rest of the world is already seeing inside EVs, one of America's most read EV publications, sent a journalist to Suzhou, China, to drive the BYD Seagull for himself. The published verdict was simple: scary good. The reviewer did not describe it as a cheap car pretending to be serious. He said it did not feel poorly built or disposable. That matters because the praise did not come from BYD marketing. It came from an American journalist who actually sat in the car, drove it, and judged it against real expectations. Carsilas.com.au saw the same thing from another angle. At a BYD media event in China, the outlet had access to vehicles costing up to 10 times more than the Seagull. Yet the small EV became the crowd favorite. The reviewer pointed to comfortable faux leather seats, a clear cabin layout, good visibility, and a driving feel that was more fun than expected. A car this cheap was not supposed to be the one people remembered most. Europe is already showing what happens when the wall is lower. In May 2025, BYD registered more battery electric vehicles in Europe than Tesla for the first time, with 7,231 against Tesla's 7,165. The margin was narrow, but the direction was clear. BYD did it despite a 17% EU anti-subsidy tariff. In the UK, where extra tariffs were not imposed, EVs became cheaper than gasoline cars for the first time in 2025, helped directly by Chinese competition. Online, the reaction has moved beyond car reviews. A trend called China Maxing spread among Gen Z viewers in 2025 and 2026, as Americans watched Chinese EVs, phones, trains, and cities that they could not access at home. Marques Brownlee, with 37 million subscribers, drove the Xiaomi SU7 Max and said it felt like a far more expensive car. After reviewing Chinese EVs, Inside EVs summarized the mood with one line: Western automakers are cooked. The next question is not whether the Seagull impressed reviewers. It is why Western automakers, even inside China, still cannot build anything close to it. The trap. Western automakers walked into Tesla, has built cars in Shanghai since 2019. General Motors has manufactured in China for decades through SAIC GM Wuling, and Volkswagen has been one of China's biggest automakers for 30 years. Yet none of them can match the Seagull's price. In 2025, Tesla held only 6% of China's domestic EV market, and a GM joint venture ranked above Tesla in Chinese EV sales. The problem was not location, it was the system behind the factory. The Rhodium Group made that point clearly. Many foreign brands already build vehicles inside China, but still cannot close BYD's cost gap. A Western company can open a Chinese plant and still depend on outside battery suppliers, outside chip systems, and older development methods. BYD's advantage comes from vertical integration, internal battery production, and in-house control. Those cannot be copied by simply moving assembly to a cheaper country. Wang Chuanfu did not describe this market like an easy victory. In BYD's 2025 annual earnings letter, he said China's auto sector had entered a brutal knockout stage. Only companies with scale, technology, and global access would survive. That warning matters because it came from the CEO of the company making the Seagull. Even the winner of the price war knows the fight is dangerous. The Seagull's design also reveals a deeper shift. Wolfgang Egger, who once worked at Lamborghini and Audi, joined BYD in 2021. He is part of a wider movement of Western design and engineering talent moving toward Chinese automakers. These experts are drawn by faster timelines, bigger scale, and fewer internal limits. The people who once shaped expensive Western cars are now helping shape affordable Chinese EVs. BYD may be winning the price war, but even its own founder says the fight is brutal. The real question now is where this ends, and whether anyone outside China can catch up. The most realistic version of where this goes. Rhodium Group's conclusion was not easy for Western automakers to hear. Closing the gap would require Western OEMs to build deeper R&D and supplier ties in China, while also cutting costs and jobs at home. That path clashes with the politics of domestic manufacturing. This is why the gap cannot be closed by one new factory or one lower price. It would require undoing decades of supply chain decisions that moved in the opposite direction. The closest parallel is the Japanese car disruption of the 1970s and 1980s. At first, American buyers resisted, politicians pushed tariffs, and Detroit dismissed the threat. Then, Honda, Toyota, and Nissan opened US factories, quality proved itself, and Japanese cars became normal on American roads. But the BYD situation has one key difference. Japan won mainly on quality and reliability. BYD's advantage is price, and that price comes from an entire EV ecosystem built from the ground up. BYD also faces pressure inside its own market. In China, Geely, Leapmotor, Xiaomi, and many smaller brands are fighting in the same price range. BYD's domestic share fell from 35% in 2023 to 29% in the first 11 months of 2025. Discounts hit a record 10% in March 2026, and per-vehicle profit reportedly dropped by 55 to 66% in 1 year. Wang Chuanfu's brutal knockout stage warning was not just about rivals. It included BYD itself. For American consumers, the most realistic near-term outcome is not the Seagull arriving in US driveways next year. Tariffs, connected vehicle restrictions, and the political mood make that unlikely. The more realistic picture is that BYD's Hungarian factory lowers costs in Europe, while Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa move faster toward Chinese EVs. America may remain protected from the competition, but that also means Americans keep paying more. The Seagull has already proved what is possible. The question now is whether America has any real answer for what comes after the wall stops working. The question no one has answered yet. The Japanese car question in the 1980s was not settled by tariffs alone. It was settled by factories. Honda opened its first American plant in Marysville, Ohio in 1982, and Toyota opened in Georgetown, Kentucky in 1988. Within a decade, Japanese brands were no longer just foreign competition. They became American employers, taxpayers, and daily drivers. The geography changed, and the argument changed with it. BYD has no confirmed plan to build in the United States. The political environment makes that hard to imagine right now, with connected vehicle restrictions, national security concerns, and strong support for tariff walls. But BYD is not waiting. It is building factories in Hungary, Brazil, Turkey, and Thailand. It is creating the global supply chain that can make the Seagull's price possible in markets without a 247.5% barrier. America's counterargument is investment. Over the past decade, roughly $200 billion in EV and battery plant projects has been announced across states like Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Toyota's North Carolina battery plant alone is a $14 billion project. The promise is that American-built batteries and components will eventually close the gap. But that outcome is measured in years, not months. Consumer awareness is moving faster than that timeline. Every TikTok clip of an $8,000 BYD Seagull, every YouTube review of a Xiaomi that feels far more expensive, and every Gen Z viewer discovering China maxing makes the wall easier to see. Tariffs can block the car, but they cannot block the knowledge that the car exists. People who were told EVs had to be expensive are now watching proof that they do not. The final question is no longer whether the Seagull is real. It exists, it works, it is sold in multiple countries, it received 5 stars in Euro NCAP testing, and Western reviewers said it was better than expected. The harder question is whether a tariff wall protecting an industry from a $12,000 competitor can survive once consumers realize they are the ones paying for that protection. That answer has not arrived yet, but the BYD Seagull is the reason the question will not go away. The rest of the world is already driving the car Americans cannot buy. Now the real mystery is how long that remains a trade policy before it becomes a national conversation. China's $12,000 EV is already real. Now the question is simple. If Tesla cannot match it, what happens when the rest of the world starts choosing it instead?